It's going to be a long night.
Oh, Sam.
All right. Let's talk about the first few weeks with your puppy and what that looks like, feels like, what that experience is like, and how dramatically different that's going to get for you. Let's talk about, I know several people had said that they've watched the vlog, so you probably saw a couple of our puppy vlogs where we shared with Euchre or Five Alive. And let's talk about general puppy behavior during those first few weeks home, because if they could always be like that.
Oh, they're so cute.
Oh.
They're so snuggly.
It's great.
Obviously, they're a bit curious, and there's like the normal puppy stuff. But a lot of the times when we first bring a new puppy home, because they're in unfamiliar territory, they tend to lean on us a bit more. They follow us around the house a little bit more. They depend on us a little bit more. They're in a new situation for the first time. They maybe haven't got their bearings yet, and they're just a little bit more in tuned to the humans in the house. And unfortunately, often we find that gives the dog owners a little bit of a false sense of what's the word? Not security, but like,
yeah, I mean,
just like a false sense of what having a dog is actually like, because it seems like,
totally.
Oh, I don't need to put a leash on him. He just follows me around.
100%.
Oh, I don't need to put him in a crate. He just naps all the time.
Yeah.
I don't need to do this. He just does this, because I think people think that what they get in the first 1, 2, 3 weeks home is sort of what is going to happen over the next few months or 2 years. And I hate to break it to you, but it really couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
As your dog goes through different phases of their growth, everything changes, and we have to change along with the dog, and we need to kind of know what's coming so that we can adapt and make better choices. But often the puppy stuff in the beginning is so fun, but for most dogs, it's not there to stay, unfortunately.
Yeah, the reality is, and think about this, you are the center of your puppy's world at that point. You know, they know nothing else. They've come home with you. You are the bringer of all good things. You are the center of attention. You're probably taking time out of your day to make sure that your puppy is, cared for, played with. The experience is just so you-centric, and this can lead to a little bit of I don't know, you get too comfortable with the idea that the puppy's probably going to be making good choices. They're probably just going to follow you around the house. They're not going to get into trouble, and we lull into this false sense of security because there's 2 developmental thresholds specifically that you're likely to see a dramatic change at, or they're going to give you a different response. That's going to create some challenges. Now, those 2 developmental thresholds, we're going to give you like a range. And again, these aren't specific, like once we get to the 8-week mark as an example, but at about 4 months and about 7 months, there's 2 developmental thresholds where you might see some of this adolescent behavior. Now, I noticed someone in the chat earlier said I've got a 9-month-old that, I'm struggling with, or something to that, I'm paraphrasing. But it's not specifically at these times, but around these ages is when you might see this kind of behavior. And we're going to talk about some changes that you need to make in your day-to-day that are going to solidify for your puppy that's learning, or solidify for your dog that they need to listen, because that's going to give them more opportunities. And it's almost like a point, it's not, when I say they're testing you, it sounds like, they have some sort of like evil plan hatched, but they're kind of figuring out how are we going to exist together. Those are important times to be focused on.
I just want to mention one thing. We're sort of giving you guys a general example of time frames, 4 months and 7 months, but keep in mind that that's very general. We're apprehensive to give exact timelines or dates, because every dog is different, and sometimes it has to do with the dog itself, and sometimes it has to do with the human and what they're doing. I noticed someone in the chat said, what happens if the puppy has been in other homes first before they get to mine. So maybe you're getting that puppy a bit older. What if you get, adopt an older dog?
Oh, this is great.
A lot of this stuff actually will apply to all ages of dogs, depending on where they are in their journey with you. So don't get too hung up on the age, especially if you're listening and you maybe have a dog that's a bit older. I assure you that something that we say tonight, regardless of the dog's age, is going to connect with you and your dog.
Absolutely.
So don't get too stuck on the age, but generally speaking, we'll talk around it because it's sort of the norm. But sometimes with dogs, there is no norm.
This is such an important point, and I guess we should talk about it more. I mean, we just understand it as dog trainers, but there are so many times when I see someone who is struggling with a rehome dog, or however the dog came into their life, and they're struggling with puppy problems.
Yes.
Dog doesn't have a response to name. Dog, has absolutely no recall. Is chewing on things,
and they're confused as to why that's happening based
right.
on the dog's age,
Exactly,
and they don't realize
exactly.
that those two things are not related.
Yeah. So remember, over the course of this, these behaviors and how you fix some of these problems have nothing to do with the dog's age. It has everything to do with their level of understanding. Yeah. So as we discuss tonight's adolescent dog stuff, if you have a dog that's 3 years old and you're seeing some of this adolescent behavior, the same tactics are going to apply. We're going to talk a lot about big picture dog training stuff for people exactly like you. But I want to bring us back to that 4-month-old mark and some of the challenges that a puppy might have or a dog might have at this age, and why around that age do we start to see some of these changes?
Yeah, 4 months, between 4 and 7 months can be a tricky one because they don't have any world experience yet. And so in some cases they can be overly confident because they don't have any previous experiences to pull from to create a feeling and opinion about. And sometimes they can just be so inexperienced with things because they really don't know a whole lot yet. They haven't had time to be trained, or they haven't been with you a long time to develop a really deep connection. So it's sort of a bit of an awkward stage, in some senses, because they can, you can't always read exactly how they're going to be. And it can be, I sort of touched on this before, but it can be really different for some dogs when they're used to a certain type of environment, when they're in their litter with their buddies and the breeder and whatever that's happening. And then you take them out of that and you plunk them in a new household with kids or no kids or other dogs or no dogs. People who travel, people who live in an apartment, people that go to parks, whatever it might be. It's just all so different for them to take in. And for some dogs, there really is a bit of an adjustment period, and dogs will adjust differently depending on their temperament or their confidence level. Some dogs will kind of go through that with a bit of caution, and sometimes you don't see dogs come out of their shell until they get a little bit older because they sort of go, oh, okay, I think I'm starting to figure this out. And there's some dogs that just bold their way through it and go first, ask questions later. Yeah. And in some ways that can be really helpful because they tend to be a bit more confident. In other ways, those dogs can be really challenging because they get into situations and they just aren't very mindful about what's going on around them. So it is sort of a funky stage because you can really get to two different sides of the story.
At this point, you are naturally controlling dogs' access to a lot of things. They aren't going out.
We hope that you are.
Yeah, anyways. We hope that you are. They're not going out into these wild scenarios with a bunch of other dogs around. They're not going out into the parks and streets and things that, the dog's this young. And this is the perfect time to teach your dog how to learn because you're controlling access to all of these places. You're controlling a lot more access to resources because you're not really sure what's going to happen if I leave them with this stuffed animal, or what's going to happen if, they're in the kitchen without supervision. You're naturally making better choices for that dog at that age. And this is when you want to get on these things. This is really when you're going to pattern some of these initial behaviors.
Yeah, I would argue that between, 4 and 7 months, it could be one of the most important age gaps in a dog's life. Right. What happens, and I would even say earlier than 4 months, what happens between 10 and 7 months really sets the tone for what's going to happen after they're 7 months. Yeah. And there's this saying that has been floating around for years and years and years, and it says you can't teach old dog new tricks. And that is not true. You can teach old dog new tricks. You can teach older dogs things, but it's just harder because you now have to undo things and then reteach things, which is always more difficult, but it's doable. So if you can give them the best information from the get-go, so they're learning the right things first, it completely changes your dog training journey, which is why we highly recommend that if you're thinking about training your dog, do not wait. Some people say, I want to wait till my dog grows up a little bit. I want to wait till this.
100%.
Don't do it. Get your butt into classes or get your butt online or whatever it might be. Do it early, because the earlier you can start, the more success you're going to have, the faster you're going to get to that success. And plus, as you're going through these rocky roads, especially when we get into the next phase that we're going to talk about, it's so much better to do it with the guidance of a professional instructor that has seen this happen. You know, we've seen dogs go through this journey thousands of times. So when, you know, dogs do this behavior, dogs do that behavior, well, we're not seeing it for the first time. We're seeing it, you know, we've seen it so many times before that it's really easy to be able to guide you through it. So it's important to not wait.
Yeah, and I mean, there's all sorts of resources available on our channel that can get you started right at the beginning as well, like really get you started along the right track. But when things start to fall apart, there's a word that we use a lot, and I'll tell you, one of the biggest, not deficits, one of the biggest weaknesses that new dog owners have is understanding leadership. What does leadership mean? Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about it, and it's not a very specific term, so we need to break it down a little bit, especially when it comes to the teenage phase, and when it comes to you struggling with whatever the thing is, whether your dog's 19 months old or 9 months old, or 4 months old, whatever that is, exercising good leadership in your dog training is going to give your dog better information. It's going to be more fair to your dog, and it's exactly maybe the changes, but certainly the choices that you want to make. I actually have a clip on here somewhere. I'm not going to leave this to Sam because I just don't think he's going to get us there. But I have a clip on here of an old video. Yeah. That I think it is old. I think we shot it with a potato. That's how old it is. That talks a little bit about leadership. So and if you are struggling with something right now, I want you to think to yourself, am I seeing the world?
People are often apprehensive
Can I think about this?
To go through some of the steps that are needed to provide good leadership over their dogs. When we start to ask people to implement structure or rules or things like that, sometimes people think that the dogs are going to not like them if they take away some of the luxuries that they've already been giving their dog. But the truth is, it's actually the humans that are a little bit more worried about these steps than the dogs are. What we need to remember is that dogs are not babies, they're not kids. They have a completely different way of thinking. So it's really important that we treat them like dogs, and then eventually, once they understand the rules of where they fit in and that you are a good leader, you get to spoil them rotten just like you've wanting to from the beginning.
So we mentioned doing all that training up front.
Such a great shot to stop me on.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
It's actually.
How do you know whether your dog?
It looks like I'm about to
420
sing a song
or sneeze. Chew.
I look very tanned in comparison to old cow.
This is an important thing to think about is, I'm at this point, what resources can I control in this situation? Is my dog ready for this kind of freedom? Is my dog ready for this kind of whatever, luxury as you refer to it, in their life? This is when you really need to make the right choice for them. Mm-hmm. And some of the symptoms of having a leadership struggle or the dog being in the teenage phase might not be terribly obvious. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things your dog might be doing that should indicate to you, like, oh, okay, this is an adolescent problem. We need to make some changes. Mm-hmm. I'll just finish this clip.
Needs more leadership or not? Well, it's actually pretty easy. You just need to look at, how are they handling the freedoms and the luxuries that you're giving them already? How good of a listener are they? How well do they make good choices in your house around distractions or your furniture or your kids? How well do they listen when you take them outside and there's a lot of distractions? Right there is going to tell you how much respect and how well do they listen to you when there's other things that could tear their attention apart from being a good dog and making good choices.
Well said,
People are
Kayl.
often
And well done.
apprehensive
Oh, I
to
thought
go
we were
through.
back. Yeah, there we are. Sam, nice try, buddy. That was really close. Talking about leadership and why it's important at this phase. Oh, Vilified Freedom dropping the super chat.
Thank you.
Let's get back to this. Let's just close this thought or finish this thought
Yep.
before we get to the super chat. Talking about leadership, being prepared to make some changes in your life, in the dog's life, that because you're starting to see, slower responses, nuisance behaviors.
Yeah, this can be a hard thing for people to wrap their head around, because a lot of us want to, give our dogs the world, and sometimes people don't really recognize that by giving your dog a lot of freedom and not having a lot of restrictions and not having follow through and having low expectations, all sort of teach the dog that they kind of run the show a little bit, which means, if they're a cooperative dog, they're probably going to listen 50, 60% of the time. But when push comes to shove, in situations where something that they would rather do, like bark at something, tear something apart, chase something, run away from you, whatever it might be, if they truly don't think that they have to listen because you've shown them through lack of follow through or poor training, bad information, bad timing, those types of things, the dog will say, well, I know I don't actually have to listen, so I'm just going to go chase this deer in the forest for a couple hours and I'll be back when I feel like it, or perhaps not back at all. And that can be a really hard thing. What I always try to remind people is that, when you're trying to be maybe a little bit more strict and structured, when you're raising a young dog and you're trying to really be clear with your expectations, have good follow through, all of that stuff, is that pretty soon, once you sort of get your dog understanding where they sort of fit in the household and get them learning that listening to you is actually a really great thing to do, then you actually get to relax a little bit. People ask us all the time, like, oh my gosh, how do you manage all of those dogs? How do you get them all to listen to you off leash?
Right.
Why do they all just stand there and stare at you all the time? Like, why aren't they taking off and running and playing with one another? And they do run and play with one another, but they all stand and wait for me to say, okay, go play. And then when I want them to stop, I just say, come on, guys. And they all run back. It's that easy. And it's because when they're young, I provide structure and follow through, and I do not allow them to be in situations where they can ignore me until I've done the work that I need to give them the luxury of being off leash or being loose in the house or going for a hike in the forest and feeling absolutely confident that when I take the leash off and I ask them to do something, not only are they going to listen to me, but they're going to want to listen to me. And that's a really important thing to say, because again, some people say leadership and they just sort of assume it's like this like big strict thing that you need to be whatever. But that's not the case. It's just that you're a fair, firm leader that follows through. You make things fun. You make things easy to follow. Yeah. And then the dogs just sort of fall right into line, and they actually think, oh, gosh, this is so easy. I don't have to make any decisions. This is so stress-free. This is perfect. And then the dogs are actually happier in the end.
Yeah, great.
It's confusing when you don't know what you're supposed to do.
For sure. I got a great question before we get to Vilified Freedom Super Chat. Can an 11-month-old who's previously well-behaved suddenly decide to misbehave on purpose? This is a great question. Let's talk about what on purpose means.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even restrict it to 11 months.
This applies to everybody.
Yeah, this applies to everybody. So when you get to a point where you feel that you've trained your dog, there are points in everybody's relationship with their dog, even professional dog trainers, where the dog tests you. They know what to do. They know the expectation. It's been a certain amount of time. You say come or you say whatever, and the dog goes, I wonder if that rule is still there. And they might respond a little slower or, not respond at all or whatever it might be. And sometimes they test us a little bit to see what we do. And unfortunately, the average human fails the test, because when the dog starts to listen a little bit less, or they start to push boundaries a little bit, we tend to say, well, you should know this. So we repeat the command again, or we raise our voice, or whatever it might be, or we go, we pull out the cookie bag and we bribe the dog, and the dog goes, sweet, now I know exactly what I can do. I just don't listen until somebody begs me to do it. But, what we would do as a strong leader and someone who, sees the dog starting to test boundaries again, we don't get upset about it. We know this happens with dogs. No big deal. We just get, the long line back on. We go through, a week or so of reminding the dog what they need to do. And the dog goes, oh, okay. Things haven't changed. The rules are still there. Got it. No problem. And then it's smooth sailing. And then sometimes that comes up again, months or years later where the dog just starts to fall off. Dogs are not robots. Yep. They're animals. And I always equip it to, if you, what is it?
Equate it to.
My
favorite thing is Kayl getting, I'm going to say you're off balance here, but my favorite thing is Kayl getting the, I guess, idioms or whatever, like those short sayings.
That's
wrong.
Great.
Okay. Let's just equip it all.
That, like, putting gas in the car. You don't put the gas in the car once and then you can drive your car forever. Yeah. Eventually the gas runs out and you got to put gas back in. Dogs are exactly the same way. You can get a really excellent solid foundation trained on your dog, and that will ride you for months and months and months and months and months of really good listening. But then things do start to slip a little bit, and then you just have to do a little bit more training with them, and then you get right back on track. But unfortunately, when people don't really know what they're doing, they do some training, or maybe they don't do any training at all, and then things start to slip, and then people don't do anything about it, and now you have a dog that says, well, I don't really need to listen anymore because clearly the rules have changed because you don't follow through.
Totally.
So that teenage part where they start to push boundaries is a huge test for your leadership. What are you going to do about it? Because the decision you make in the next little bit is really going to change the course of how your dog listens to you after that.
Yeah. And to Rahul's question or point, what can we do with a young puppy before they hit the teenage phase in order to set them up for the teenage months, years, as well as possible? Well, part of that is make training a ritual. It's a habit. It's something you're doing all the time, so that it's not like you're not waiting for problems to come up and then having to address them then. Just make it part of your everyday routine. We talk a lot about natural training opportunities that happen like multiple times a day, whether it's allowing them to get to their food bowl or insisting that they remain in a sit while you go out the door. It's not about being the heavy-handed leader. It's about, hey, buddy, if you put in a little bit of work for me, then you get something that you want. But building that into your day-to-day is exactly what you need to allow you to prepare for these periods in your dog's life where things are going to get a little bit more challenging because behaviorally your dog's changing. You're introducing them to tougher distractions and more difficult situations. But these that's a great way, is to sort of establish the routine. Now we need to get to a couple super chats. I see our friends Jess from Gone to the Snow Dogs.
Hey, Jess.
Dropping a super chat. We need to get to Vilified Freedom really quickly. Good question. I have 3 cats, just got a 12-week-old pit. Is Tug going to feed prey drive or just good fun? He's okay with the cat so far. So basically just asking about Tug play.
Is Tug going to feed prey drive or just good fun? Okay, that's a good question. Short answer, and I'll give you a long answer too, but the short answer, playing Tug will have no influence on whether your dog is going to be interested in the cat or not. Those live totally separate from each other. If your dog's going to decide to be excited about the cat, that's going to happen. You can Tug all day long, that's still going to happen. But here's the good news. If you are playing Tug and you're playing engagement games where your dog is actively using their mind and their body, it will help zen the dog out so that they are easier to manage in other situations. That's why physical exercise for a dog is immensely helpful for their overall behavior in your house, on walks or whatever. Most dogs are severely under-exercised because people think going for a walk is exercise, and that is not the case. So playing Tug, all of that stuff is great. We do a ton of Tug with our dogs. We absolutely love it. Yeah. There's so many benefits to playing Tug with your dog that can allow you to show your dog that you're a good leader by having them, not touch the toy until you give them permission, to teach them to give the toy up to you when you ask them to teach them about bite inhibition so that when you're holding the toy, they know how to be very careful around your hands and your clothing. There's just endless benefits to playing the game. In terms of the cat, though, tugging will be great Lucky there's no issues now, but if you do start to see that there is, then you just need to make sure that you keep a line or a leash on your puppy or on your dog around the house, so that if the dog is showing any interest and you want to use phrases like leave it or things like that, you can use the line to follow through to ensure that the dog actually does leave it. And then, of course, you can redirect them to something else. You just need to control the two things. So although they don't have a direct relation, both things will be great.
Actually, Vilified Freedom dropped a second super chat asking same question about Squeak Toy. I've been removing the squeakers. Thanks for responding. So to this point, now
Squeak toys are just annoying, so I appreciate why you do that anyway.
Well, also my head sort of makes me think about, I love the interactive toy, regardless of if it squeaks or not. The beautiful thing about an interactive toy is that it's only fun with you. And if you're struggling with a dog who's distracted by everything and they're starting to make decisions that you don't like and you want to get more focus and attention on you, imagine what can happen when you have a toy that's only fun with you. And you get to work on, a leave it or some emotional control. And you get to work on a drop it or an out. Mm-hmm. And you get to exercise your dog. And. That's the beautiful thing about these interactive toys, is that it's about you and your dog, and that's the only way it's fun. The squeaker thing, whether if the squeaker's in the tug toy, I mean, I wouldn't be so worried about the fact that it's squeaking, but and maybe that's what you're asking. But if you're asking about like just a squeaky toy that the dog can chew on, I would be thinking about, I'd be wondering, do I want my dog to have all sorts of fun things that they can do on their own independently, or do I want more things that are only fun with me? So if this squeaker is in something like an interactive toy, I mean, our puppy, we actually have. Oh yeah, those are pretty old toys. But like this.
Well, this is this was actually one of the very first McCann dog fuzzy ball things ever made.
So I'm going to drop a bit of
This is probably like 15 years old.
There's a secret. I'm gonna say it. So we have our.
I don't even know what he's about to say.
We have our treat tug pouch available at McCannDogs.store. We're working on the best toy for dogs who aren't interested in toys available. It's an interactive squeak, tug, food, and crunch pouch. That's exactly what's coming down the line. You guys are the first people to know about this. I'm not sure.
I feel like you might be getting in trouble for saying
I might. But this is exactly what I mean. This is why we know, like, this interactive toy, if it's got a squeaker in it, that's okay. It's not going to entice the dog to go, it might entice your dog to get even more energetic and enthusiastic, but I'd leave the squeaker in an interactive toy. Depending on their behavior, I don't know how many opportunities I'd give them to, self-satiate and go do their own thing and be satisfied by that.
Simplify is we don't give our dogs toys like these to go and play with on their own and chew. We would never give our dog a squeaky toy to just go off and play with on their own. It's either played with us. If we want to give them things that they are safe to go and lie on their own and chew and play with, it would be something that they couldn't destroy, like a chew bone, Kong, something like that. Nothing that they can defuzz or depuff or de-squeak or de-eyeball or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. Two totally different things that we do for safety, but also for relationship and control.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you, Vilified Freedom, for the 3 super chats. Jess from Gone to the Snow Dogs, she asks, what are your thoughts on a dog who's full of anxiety when she isn't with her sisters? And I saw that there's a little bit longer form of this, I think. I just don't have it in there. Eleanor needs her sisters. Also, are you coming to see us in Toronto at the end of the month? The Toronto Pet Show happens. Just maybe you can drop the dates. I took a quick look at it. I might be working Fire that weekend, but I'm not sure. But Jessica and Gone to the Snow Dog and the Snow Dogs, as well as maybe some other cast people on the from the channel might be there at the end of this month in Toronto at the International Centre. So Jess, can you just drop the date so that everybody can see in case you're local and you want to check that out? So Jessica asked, did you get that? Thoughts. Eleanor needs her sisters. What are your thoughts on a dog that's full of anxiety when she isn't with her sisters?
Yeah, this is this question opens a big can of worms, I think. There's lots of different directions that you can go, but what I read from this is that the thoughts are, Sometimes this is created when you have, and I know you have multiple dogs, Jess, but this is often created when people have multiple dogs, and when they bring a new dog into the household, they have the new dog spend a lot of time with all of the other dogs, because dogs bond to dogs very, very quickly, much faster than humans bond to dogs. And depending on the nature or their personality of the dog, sometimes that some dogs can get really attached to the other dogs, and when you separate them, this happens, we see this with litter mates all of the time when people get two puppies at the same time, or people get young dogs and keep them with the older dogs. When you try and separate them, there isn't a really strong one-to-one bond with the person and the dog, because the dog is just so focused on the other dog that it can actually create, a lot of people think, oh, they're friends, they're all this great stuff, but you go to separate them, and then the young dog is very anxious, and then it becomes challenging to like send them to the vet, or if you have to divide them up for babysitting or whatever it might be, it can be really challenging. I will be totally transparent. There is not a quick fix for it. Anytime you're dealing with anything to do with anxiety, everything needs to be very slow. But what I would begin with is just start with some very small separation things. And that might be creating the dog in a different room while they, eat their meals. So they're doing something that's fun and it only lasts like 30 seconds or 2 minutes, and then bring them back together, or have puppy or young dog be in the crate, or whatever dog it is that's showing anxiety, let the other dogs have some freedom, but then put the other dogs out, and then spend way more one-on-one time with the dog who's a bit more anxious, and by one-on-one time, do something together that keeps the dog engaged, whether it be a little bit of training, something that involves whatever the dog is motivated by, whether it's food or toys or whatever it might be. Slow separation until you can start to have more and more and more and more. And then the great thing is once all of that is sort of settled, then you can put the family back together again, and you'll be fine. It's not like a constant thing, but just for everybody listening, if you are in a situation where you have multiple dogs, or you do want to bring another dog into the home, our recommendation to you is to spend the first 6 months to 9 months to a year with a bit more separation than you think you would need to, until all of the bonds are formed between the humans and the dogs. We find that really makes a big difference in the confidence of the young dog of the or new dog to the household.
And Jess, if you need some follow-up, you can always call us down here in the train station on the payphone. You know how to reach us. We also have a super chat. I mean, are there still payphones? It'd be awesome if.
I don't think so.
From
But I don't know.
GSD Random, put my 5-month-old GSD on a line outside in the mornings.
Yeah, find it there. Yeah,
it's just not very long. The preview isn't very long, is it? On a line outside in the mornings for a little bit, but when I go to bring her inside, she jumps and tries to bite. Help! So what sort of advice would you give in this situation?
Well, it's great that you're putting your dog on a line, which is great.
Oh, you know what? I just want to clarify. Is this like on a tie-out line, or are they out on like a long line?
Yeah, what do you mean by on a line?
Yeah, because that's going to change how to address it.
On a line outside in the morning for a little bit, but when I go to bring her inside, I bet you're absolutely right.
I wonder.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious to see what you say in the chat, but we're reading this a little bit differently. If you're putting your dog outside and putting them on a line or tying them out or whatever it might be, and then going inside and leaving the dog, that's the first thing that we're going to have you change. We actually don't recommend that you do that with dogs. When you're outside, especially if you have a 5-month-old dog that's young, impressionable, probably isn't very well trained yet because it's just a youngster, you need to go outside with your dog. And when I initially went to answer the question, I thought you were having the dog on like a long line, which is what we use. So my brain just went right to what we would do. So it's a tie out. Yeah. So if you can, stop at the tie-out. We do not recommend that. Take your 20-foot line, attach it directly to the dog's collar, and go out with your dog. Encourage them to go to the bathroom, spend a few minutes outside playing with the dog, maybe do some training, maybe do some tugs, some chase, that type of thing. And then you can take the dog in from there. But, when your dog doesn't have any training or any manners yet, because it's young, and you have it tied out and you walk up towards it, if you don't now have have the ability to say settle, sit, or leave it, or lie down, or anything like that. You're just setting your dog up to rehearse bad behaviors and to fail. So not until your dog has some skills underneath their belt should you be putting your dog in that situation. And the good news is once they're trained, you don't need to tie them to anything because they just listen to you and they won't run away. So we don't use any tie out training, to be perfectly honest. My dogs have never been tied out at all. I have zero experience with it because it's just not the methods that we use. But we love the idea of a long line. So it sounds like you have one that hopefully you can use anyways. Put it on, go outside with the dog, and if the dog decides to get rambunctious and jump up, you are right there all ready to take control. You could step on the line, you could take the line in your hands and place the dog into a sit and get them to settle for a moment before going inside. You can bring your bait bag out with some treats inside, and you can teach the dog to come and sit in front of you so you have a little bit more control. So there's lots of things you can do, but unfortunately the scenario that you're in does not lend itself to allow you to have control in any way.
No, and also at this point, we're talking a little bit about teenage behavior and the adolescent periods in a dog's life, and you're likely here because you're struggling with something. In fact, in the chat, let me know, is there one behavior that's gotten worse for you and your dog? Or is there one thing you're really struggling with? You're like, oh, this must be...
Are you speaking to everybody? Or
yeah,
the
everybody.
person?
Yeah, everybody. I want to know, like, what's your struggle with the teenage phase? But when we're talking about setting a dog up to be able to, like, train through these things more easily or giving a dog great information, that involves you a lot more than the tie out. So it's important to take advantage of these opportunities. This is a natural training opportunity where you can go outside and do their potty break or whatever, and then work on the things that Kayl talked about. But you're always there. I think a lot of people, I say this because this was a bad choice I made with my first dog that before I came to McCann Dogs is I did the fence thing. I did the invisible fence thing. And I just let her out whenever she needed to go out, and then you'd go check on her and whatever. But that was not good information for that dog specifically.
They just learn so many bad behaviors that way because you're not there to give them any guidance or instruction. They, can dig, they can bark, run, charge dogs, walking by the street and learn to bark. There's just so many things that your dog can learn to do wrong. Yeah. And then what happens is you wonder why like bad behaviors are popping up in other aspects of the dog's life, and it's directly because we're tying the dog out in the backyard. And then we have to fix those things rather than prevent them from happening in the first place.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more work, but believe me, it's worth it. It's that ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure idea. You just don't want to have to untrain some of these bad behaviors. And you're going to build a relationship faster. Moving on to that second developmental threshold, and it's around the 7-month mark. And the challenge that comes along with that age, or at least in that, it depends on the breed of dog, size of dog, but at that age, they've done a couple things. Number one, they may have learned to rehearse some of the bad behaviors that you don't like because you think, we did training when they were a puppy or when they were a young dog, but we don't need to do training anymore. Kayl talked about how many of your dog training skills are perishable skills. That'll get worse if you don't do some maintenance of them. Mm-hmm. You don't practice them every once in a while. But now your dog's a little bit older, 7, 8, 9 months, and they're big and strong. Maybe your dog is, now at a size where, it's cute when the puppy jumps up, the puppy golden jumps up. Not so cute when they're 70 pounds, or 65 pounds and they're jumping 7 feet in the air.
Yeah.
That's an athletic golden. Who can come to our dock diving pool this spring when we open and have our grand opening celebration. But these are some of the new challenges that you have. And the problem with this is that trying to fix these problems is so much more work than understanding that you continue that training throughout. Dogs bigger, faster, stronger than they were before. You've also not been training in a while, so now you've got to go back and you've got to almost start from the beginning. You have to establish that foundational skill. Did your dog ever really get it? Did they ever truly understand walking on leash. I see a lot of people are struggling with the recall or
Yeah,
the hear
recall.
command.
I've seen that a lot.
Did your dog ever really know it? Or are you putting them in a situation now where they're free at the park? Because they're
And
they're
did
a
they
big dog.
sometimes know it, or did they
Right.
know it because you
Yeah.
had treats in your hand,
Yeah.
or you were holding their ball or their frisbee, or there was literally no one else around, or
Yep.
they're young and they haven't really learned to ignore you yet? Is that what they knew? Because if that's the case, they didn't actually really know it, and which is fine. This is just what most people do, and what we try to do when we're training something is we set the dog up for success. We try to get the dog rehearsing the behavior, whatever we're working on, correctly as many times as we possibly can in an environment where it's super easy for them to do it right. But that is not a trained dog. And that's where the false sense of security sometimes happens for the person, because you think, oh my gosh, look how awesome this dog's listening. That's great, but now we need to go through a proofing phase. Can they do it when you're farther away? Can they do it when there's distractions? Can they do it in this location, that location? Are they listening on the first call every single time, or are you saying it 10 or 12 times before the dog actually listens and then go, hey, look, you listened? It's like, well, no. He kind of did it when he felt like it rather than when you said it. So there's a level of criteria, and that's something that we try to instill in our students of our programs is take your expectations and bring them up to here. Raise your expectations of how well the dog should listen to you, because the dogs are just so freaking capable of doing it if they're getting good information and if we have high expectations. I want my dog to respond to the come command the first time that I say it, every single time, no matter what's happening. If they are chasing a deer, if they are running towards a road, and I say name come, they better put on those brakes, whip around, and race back to me. That is the type of knee-jerk reaction that we are looking for. And if I get anything else other than that, I train through it.
Yeah.
If you want to know how to train through it, you should sign up for our classes, because it's way too long for me to tell you to do. But that's what we're trying to get at here.
Sue K, all the problems listed here are things we work on in Life Skills.
That's nice.
Life Skills 1. Yeah, thanks, Sue. And these are the kinds of things that we work on. I love the idea that you identify a thing. Someone was saying, can you talk a little bit about what happens when the responses become slow? Then you train them. Then you write them down in your journal, your training journal, and you say, next time we go outside, next time we're going to go for a walk, instead, I'm going to work on response to name. I'm going to work on the recall. I'm going to make note of this thing, because it's not where I want it to be.
Yeah.
And this is when things start to slip, and it's a slippery slope. Your dog gets worse at them. They quickly learn that, you know what, I don't have to respond. I can do my own thing. And this is, you've got to get on it early. Sharon mentioned lots of trouble with our 7-month-old putting his teeth on us or biting our clothes. Well, at 7 months old, this is exactly where the leadership factors need to come in. You need to reevaluate. Where am I in my training? What opportunities does my dog have to make these mistakes? Am I putting a house line back on to get more control?
What's your technique like?
Right. How much am I giving the dog an opportunity to be up on the bed, up on the couch? All of these things that at this point...
Are you still using a crate?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you that I wasn't using a crate. My dog was 2 years old. I went to McCann Dogs. I learned about the value of a crate, and very quickly she started to figure out that I was worth listening to. Here's the beauty of a crate: is you are everything to that dog. You exercise them, you do your thing, you pop them in the crate while you go do your work, or you go do whatever in the house when you can't monitor or supervise them. And then when you come back and you go to let them out, you're there again. You are you're their focus. You are the center of the world to that dog. And that's even more important as we get to these adolescent phases, because as we talked about, when your puppy's a little teeny thing, you aren't competing with the enormous, giant, grand world around you. But when they get a little bit older, you are. So you need to control, how are they being rewarded? What are they being gratified by? Are they learning that barking in the backyard for an hour while, you have a bath or whatever is super satisfying? It's going to be pretty hard to untrain that barking behavior if you're not out there to work on it with them. So maybe you need to manage them a little bit better. It's really valuable. And it was something that absolutely turned around my dog training in an instant, understanding the value of good management.
I just want to quickly say I don't read everything in the chat, but I'm trying to read as much as I can. And I just want to remind everybody who's asking questions and inquiring about things in the chat, anybody who has a name highlighted in blue works for McCann Dogs. They're a professional dog trainer that follow McCann Dog methods and whatnot. There's lots of other people offering suggestions in the chat, which is so lovely. However, I am seeing that some of the suggestions are not in line with McCann Dog methods, which is totally fine. There's more than one way to do things, but if you've come here to get some advice or some guidance on what we do here, just keep in mind that unless you hear it from somebody in blue, it might not be what we do. Oh, come on, that's good.
Sorry, I missed it. Something about what we do.
I never make up good
names in
rhymes.
blue. Never mind what we do.
Yeah.
Really well done.
Anyways, I just wanted to say that just because I wanted to make sure that people, we have strong feelings about certain things, and we would just want to make sure that people aren't getting guidance and going off and doing it when it didn't come from us.
Yeah, Sharon says, we always have a house line on them, and we use a crate. I've watched numerous videos, too. Sharon, I think you are a student. I would reach out to the office. As a student, you get to reach out to professional dog trainers in our office. Give the office a call, and they can follow up with you. Sunny H. My puppy cries if she's more than 2 steps from me. She follows me everywhere. I can't go to the restroom alone without putting her in a crate covered up. I guess there's a few questions we need to follow up with. Sunny, how old is your puppy? And what's the experience been like up until this point? Is this a new behavior? Is this an adolescent teenage phase thing?
How long have you been using the crate for?
Yeah, these are all important questions. And this is why joining us in our online program is a great opportunity, because we get to work with you. We get the trainers in the online program get to know your puppy. Instructor Robbie is one of our superstars in the online training program. And, they'll be able to give you specific advice for your situation and specific advice for your dog. Makes it a little bit difficult on YouTube. But,
I'm going to keep my eye on
Yeah, keep your eye on that for me. And mods, if you can just keep your eyes peeled for Sunny H. There
we go. 11 weeks. Oh, just a baby.
Oh, okay.
2 weeks since we've had her. Okay, cool. Yeah, so she's super young still, which is great. And I'm glad you asked about the age, because an 11-week-old puppy is very different than, an 8-week-old dog or whatever. Yeah. So, in the early stages, the crate training in dogs that get really attached to us can be difficult in terms of trying to do some separation. And sometimes when you have, when she's tired but not otherwise. Okay, great, Sunny. That's helpful. Thank you for filling in those gaps. So what I would recommend that you do is actually for a little while, start using your crate more, Sunny, and try to use it in, maybe every meal for the next couple weeks. Your puppy gets in the crate with the crate door closed, uncovered, and when they're done eating, when your puppy's done eating the crate, you can let them out, or perhaps just leave them in a little bit longer. But try and use the crate a little bit more often when you're both in the room and when you're out of the room, because what we don't want to do is only use the crate when they're sleeping or they're tired. The dog also needs to learn that they have to go in their crate when we have to quickly jump on a call, or we need to run out the door to talk to the neighbor, or go grab milk, or long periods of time, short periods of time, random times. Our dogs have to learn that the crate's just no big deal. You just go in, it's your place, you got all your things in there, you can relax, you're comfortable, all of that. But sometimes we have to use the crate more in the early stages to kind of get over that hump, and it would not be unusual for it to get worse before it gets better, because you're changing the dog's regular routine. All of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, this is different. But if your puppy, has gone to the bathroom, they've been mentally and physically exercised in some way.
Yeah, that's a good, focus on that for a minute, because so much of crate training, people don't understand why that's even important.
Yeah. I think sometimes people just pop their dog into a crate and expect they're going to be okay with it. And we always think to ourselves, like, why do we never have crate training issues? Like, why does that happen? Yeah. I've never, ever, ever had a dog that hasn't just
figured it out.
almost instantly like their crate after a couple days. It's just never been a thing. And if I think about it, it's because they have so much interaction when they're out of their crate that they are ready to just chill out by the time they go in. They've been trained, they've been exercised, they've had play, they've tugged, they've done all of these things, they've gone to the bathroom, all of that stuff. They can go in from there. So I would just raise the engagement a little bit beforehand and then start to use your crate a little bit more. But the good news is you have a very, very young puppy at this stage. 11 weeks really isn't very old, and there's lots of room for improvement and to get on the right track.
We talked a little bit about those two developmental thresholds where you might encounter some problems. As you're working through those specific challenges in your training, there's some things that you can do that will help you to avoid any further complications, that will help you to maintain those great responses, whether it's a beautiful walking on leash or great recall. And these are things that we do in our daily lives as dog trainers. We'll do them randomly, whether the dog's 7 months, 7 years, 17 years, whatever. Things that we'll do on our walks, as an example. Like, what sort of thing would we do just to maintain a little bit of spring in the step?
Yeah.
For our off-leash walks.
Yeah, I'm not listening to you.
Oh,
sorry.
What would we do during our off-leash walks to reward those dogs?
Off-leash walks.
Yeah.
Yes. In our off-leash walks, we'll do all kinds of things to reward our dogs for good attention and for listening. We'll, bring some of our dogs' favorite rewards, and sometimes I'll walk and hide a Frisbee in the back of my hoodie so nobody knows it's there.
Yeah.
And then I'll call my dog, and when they come racing back, they get about a couple feet away, and then I'll whip the Frisbee out, and we'll have a group play a tug, or I'll throw it for them a few times, and then I'll, put it back up my sweatshirt and then walk for a few minutes again. We also play a game with our dogs. I love playing this with my young dogs, where I just call it the look back game. So basically we'll walk forward, and every time my dog stops and checks in with me to look back to see where I'm going without being asked, I will start hooting and hollering, and I will run the other direction, screaming and making all kinds of fun noises, and the puppy will turn the afterburners on and chase after me. And when my puppy catches me, we have play, I reward immensely. And so what happens is I actually teach the dog, always pay attention to where I am. Pay attention to where I am. Don't get too far. Check in often, because sometimes if you're not paying attention, you are going to miss the party. Yeah. And what happens is the dogs will start walking stiff, and all of a sudden they'll turn, hey, where are you going? And then sometimes I'll take off and run, and sometimes I'll just, hey, good dog, good checking in. I'll praise with my voice, and I won't run away. But I love that little look back game. We keep it really fun and interesting when they're in the early stages, so that, when the dogs walk, they're not interested in running away. They're engaged with us.
Yeah. Leash walks, randomly rewarding. The McCann method, we're focused on working you away from food so that you don't have to have food with you. But you can always use it to randomly reward your dog for great attention, a great response to name. When we have a young dog in training, and when they first start to get a little bit more freedom, we'll always have treats available as well, whether it's a toy or treat, some way to reward them, so that when we get that snappy response to name, we can call them in on our recall finish. We can call them in, have them sit under control, and then reward them a bunch. Yeah. All of these exercises, all of the aspirations you have with your dog, be sure to reward the good stuff, even after you're done training, which most people consider, as dog trainers, we know that's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
Smokey and Juno, thank you for the super chat. I'm just going to open that up.
Yeah, the look back game. I don't know why I haven't talked about that before. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
I think I might put that little game in a new program that we're putting together. I feel like it would be a fun little thing.
That's a good idea. Hi, guys. I'm Jared. My Husky and Pomsky struggle with impulse control on leash. What's a good technique to help them out? I'm also in channel Jumpstart and plan to make lots of content with my pups. Well, thank you for the super chat, Jared. We talk a little bit about, I'm wondering what the best video is for this, because understanding impulse control and leaping, jumping out, I can't think of what the word is, reactivity on leash, comes down to timing is one of the factors, rehearsing good stuff, controlling the distractions, controlling whatever that challenging object, person, thing is. What's that video we talked about with the concentric circles? We call it the training target. that training target video.
I think that one is related to like greeting manners, but it could be applied with exactly the same thing.
Yeah. So can you talk just about the training target briefly for impulse control?
Yeah. So first of all, I think you mentioned maybe 2 dogs.
Husky and Pomsky.
Yeah. So first of all, I would, and perhaps you're doing this already, Jared, so forgive me if you are, but have the dogs work your leash training separate, so not both dogs together, especially if you're getting any impulse control stuff where the dogs are being super impulsive. They'll feed off of each other and then we'll make it worse. So absolutely need to work this individually, one dog at a time. And I would really work on making sure that you have some type of control position that you can fall back on that gets the dog into a nice calm mind frame. And that's what we talk about in this video. Hopefully Dan can find it for you. But it's working on teaching the dogs to do a controlled sit at our left-hand side on a loose leash. And we train the dogs to hold a sit on a loose leash beside us until we release them. And that control position can be used in all kinds of scenarios. But what this position does is it teaches your dog about having impulse control. And when we train it, we don't train it around, other dogs and highly stimulating distractions to begin with. We start super simple with very calm, minor distractions, so that the dog doesn't have to use a lot of impulse control. They can just simply learn to sit on a loose leash and hold the sit. For some dogs, that's hard in itself. And once the dog gets the understanding that they have to stay sitting beside us until we tell them that they can move, then we start to ramp up the stimulation and the excitement around them, so that they are learning to maintain that impulse control. And then we can, of course, fall back into that position out in the real world when we need it. But it needs to start with some foundational training with the dog's individual.
Yeah, and if it's one instead of the other, you might be taking one dog for a walk and then training your other dog to walk. Remember, taking your dog for a walk and training your dog to walk are 2 different things. So maybe you're training both of them.
Yeah.
Maybe they're both reactive. Keep that in mind. That's sort of a different way of looking at the same problem. Mark with the super chat. Oh my goodness, I've lost the Mark. There it is. Hi there. I walk my dog and she's an 8-month-old Jack Russell. She walks nice with me, but with my sister, when she walks her, she pulls and sits down and won't move. So this lends itself a little bit to some of that leadership, those leadership things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
What kind of suggestion would you have for Mark to work on this problem?
Yeah, it can be difficult when dogs are going from person to person because they will often size that person up and kind of decide whether they think that they're worth listening to or not. And, it would be great if your sister could learn a little bit about some good techniques on how to use the leash and, timing of reward, how to motivate the dog. Perhaps they need to spend a little bit more time doing other things together that's not walking to build a bit of a common relationship. Taking a dog for a walk is... it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And it requires a bit of relationship. It requires some leadership and some control. And so often we would suggest that a person and a dog are able to conquer other things that are easier to walk than walking before going for a walk. So I think it might be important that they spend some other time together working on maybe more stationary type exercises with limited distractions to build on a bit of a rapport with one another, build a bit more of a relationship, because that will make it easier for your sister to get your dog to listen to them. It's not a matter of like, oh, just take this treat or, use this leash or do it this way and it'll be fine. Right. So much of this is about how the person and the dog works together, and very often that needs to be accomplished away from walking. Walking is like a university level skill to do. It's very, very difficult to take a dog for a walk prior to training. So there's other things that you can master first that will help the walking become easier in time.
We have whole families that will take our in-class, in-person and online training programs. So if that's an option for you, that might be something that could help. Remember, it's not about the dog's age. It's about their level of understanding. We have people.
Puppy summer.
We have people from all over. Dogs of all ages that are in our life skills program, as an example. If you're trying to work on a specific skill, you get a professional dog trainer to help you through that. We are in overtime. I actually just saw, I think the 10:45, or sorry, the 8:45 is rolling in. We're here in the train station. We can't miss that train. Drop a like if you are enjoying the overtime show here in the train station. We have a free puppy seminar happening this Saturday in our training facility, 929 Brock Road in Flamborough. If you are local, we would love to have you out. You can come hang out with us, and we've got some pretty great instructors in there that are delivering the puppy seminar.
Something to note is that it is not
people only.
For puppies.
People only know puppies.
Yeah, it's about puppies, but not for puppies. And we find a lot of the time when we are trying to like give people guidance, it can be really challenging sometimes to do it with the distraction of the dog there. So we're offering a free seminar for people to come in, see the facility, ask us your millions of questions. We're going to cover all of the popular topics that people are constantly asking us about. We're going to talk to you about that and give you a chance to watch some classes and to listen to our advice, ask some questions. So that again is on Saturday at 1:00. It's in our facility in Flamborough, Ontario. It is required for pre-registration. So if you contact our office, hopefully somebody can drop the contact information in the chat for us. We'd love to meet you.
We worked with some music creators to develop songs that were exactly right for dogs, especially during the crate training phase, to help them. If a dog's anxious when you leave your home for the day or however long, because we had that exact same problem. We were staying in a house that was near the road, and trucks were rolling by all day, and one of our dogs was really worried about it when we were traveling. So we decided to work together with some music creators to make music for dogs. McCann Dogs Music. It's a YouTube channel. You can listen to us on Spotify or Apple Music. We have many playlists over there too. 24-hour live streams that you can just put on so that your dog can relax while they're in their crate, while they're hanging out, while you're not home. The perfect lower third is up. At the end of tonight's show, you can head right over there and go check that channel out. Thank you for all the super chats. A huge thank you to all the Heart Dog supporters for joining us, and a big thank you to you. We hope we have helped you to see a different side of your current training struggles. The change that it made in my life was dramatic, and I hope to be able to give you just a little piece of the experience that I had when we're here in the train station. Sam, are you almost ready to roll it? With all of the teaching, all of the training, all of the things that we've talked about tonight, the rest, my friends, well, that is up to you.